So now what I think I want to do is let me propose something to everybody here about the monopole motor, about what can be done with the motor. Suppose that the person that's doing this motor is not capable of building a wheel like this and having bearings, but they've got a small wheel and they've just got a fan just like this, something that just come off a fan, or a plastic fan like that right there, right? And they can just glue some magnets around the wheel just like you see right here. So all we're going to use this for is a trigger.
Okay, can you stop it? So this is...
So yeah, they've drilled some holes and they've put some magnets in here, all north poles.
And that's plastic or wood?
Yeah, it's plastic.
Okay. So no...
And see, it's just bearing slot, so basically what I could do is put a propeller on the front of this. And I can represent the propeller by getting a piece of cardboard. And of course you know that you could set this up in the wind. And you build a very small coil under here. One single winding. So I'm going to go ahead and get on the board and show you what I'm proposing that can be done with the monopole if you want. What I'm proposing here is, suppose that I want to make a wind turbine, and I'll just draw this as the propeller. And then all I have to do is, of course, put this in a bearing block. And all I need after that is a small wheel. And all I have to do then is place my magnets around the wheel. North pole's out. And then all I need is a very small coil here. And only one winding. So as many turns as you can get on this coil. And of course, since it's being used with these magnets, you want the iron rods again. We want to use iron rods and not a bolt. So then what we would do is with this is we would use the wind as a trigger. So the wind comes along, turns the wheel, triggers. Say, well, how's that going to work, Don? Well, real simple, because your power coil is then isolated from this coil. So then all we need is another coil. And of course, this could be a solid core coil. You could use the bolt in this coil, but most likely if you have the welding rods, use the welding rods. Although for my demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a solid core coil. So then this coil looks like this. So our circuit's going to be this. We're going to call this P and this P. We're going to put a diode in. We're going to run that diode to battery B, which would be this battery here. Battery A would be up here. So we've got B and we've got A, 12 volts, plus, minus. So then we would run this plus to the top of P, which is this coil, and this coil is going to be T for trigger. We put our transistor in the circuit. We'll use the ground again. This makes one loop. And then, of course, we take this negative terminal and bring it right back up to this positive terminal. Then, for our trigger, we go ahead and we take this bottom winding and we bring it here. And we just insert our resistor in here. And we're going to change this around a little bit this time because we don't know where this is going to trigger with the wind, so we'll just say half a 680, which would be around 330. And of course we put our diode in here again. And here we have our wind circuit. Now this not only could be a wind circuit with a propeller, this could be a water wheel in a small stream that you couldn't get any power out of. In other words, just a little simple stream. Some where nature supplies the energy just to turn the wheel, the same as nature is going to supply the energy here to turn the wind machine. And so let's hook this up and see if this actually works. And we're going to show you how to do it here. So what I've got here is I've got battery A. We're no longer going to use the input to this machine. We're just going to use the propeller of this machine. So we've got our battery A, which is just a battery that's going to be used for the trigger source. And we have a coil. Just a normal coil, and I know you're going to ask how many turns, so I'm going to tell you how many turns are on here. There's 1,750 turns of number 23 wire on this primary, because we're not going to use a secondary. This was just a coil I had around. So I'm just going to test it out for you. So the bottom of the coil, we're going to put, and I made this little circuit here, which is nothing more than the circuit that I'm going to draw for you on the board when I'm finished here. It's the same transistor as one of these. A 330 ohm resistor, a diode between the base emitter, the collector is free here.
Move your hands away from the battery a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
And so how we're going to hook this up is the bottom of this coil is going to go, and you can see that I'm just going to twist this together. To the collector. You can get it to stay on there. So we have our collector, and of course the top of the coil, which is in our diagram, is going to go to the plus terminal of the battery here. So we'll just use a red clip lead. And then the emitter of the transistor is going to go to the negative of the battery on the primary. So we'll just use a black. Okay, so now we're going to just use the trigger winding from this coil that's on the wind machine. So you can see that the trigger of these green wires This is going to the ground of the transistor, which are the emitters. So we're going to put this to the emitter, which would be this negative terminal, and the yellow, which is coming from, it's going to the bases. We're going to run to this 330 ohm resistor. And so that would be our basic hookup. Then all we have left to do is take this negative lead from battery B, and run it back to the positive here. And take the diode and run it to the positive. So now we need to have our wind. So we're going to have some wind here.
So the wheel here is the equivalent of this little wheel that you've just drawn on.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
What we're going to do is turn this into a wind generator
Okay.
without any drag whatsoever. So we're going to get our wind up. We're going to get, now our wind's coming up, and so what we're doing is we're building a trigger pulse. Okay, so you see this has to be reversed now because it's not going to follow because it's not with these windings.
What's
So-
reversed?
So you have to reverse the trigger signal to get this to work. So here we go. So you could see it. It's lit. See?
So when it's lit, it's charged.
So see, yes. You see, what we want to do is we want to adjust this resistor now so the trigger lights constantly. So 330 ohms is a little bit too low. It wants more like 100 ohms there. All right, so we'll pause just a minute and I'll get the 100 ohms. Okay, so remember, as I said, that I chose the 330 ohms because I want to get somewhere in the ballpark to see where it's going to operate. And I can see here that that's just a little bit too high for the wind here. And you can see here that 100 is not quite there yet because we're not getting all the pulses.
And you can tell this because the light.
Because of the neon light. That's why I put it there. So you want a steady neon light. You want a steady neon light just like this, but limited a little bit. That's much too bright. Okay?
Why do you say it's too bright?
Because we don't want to burn the gas in the.
Okay. So you just want to dim
So
it
what
down.
we'll do is we'll just take this 330 and this 100, and we'll put them together. And there, we're pretty close right now.
So it's okay to flicker?
Yeah, you want it to flicker. Actually, you'd like it a little bit brighter than that. So I think this is going to be around 47 ohms. So I'll go get a 47 ohm, and we'll put it in the circuit. We should be ready to go.
Okay.
Because you have to adjust for what you're doing with the machine.
Mm-hmm.
What I want everybody to understand is these two circuits are totally independent from each other, and so therefore you have to adjust it because it's not part of the same coil any longer. And the phase is going to be a little bit different on this one. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put this 47 ohm in there. And there we go. So we're pretty close to operating the circuit right where we want it, because so now it's this coil is independent from the trigger coil, and the output from this, then we can run to our battery and the light goes out.
So that battery is being charged?
That battery is being charged by the wind now.
Okay. And battery A is just providing a trigger pulse?
Just providing a very small trigger pulse to it.
Okay.
So if we want to bring this down to like 10 ohms or 15 ohms, I'll go get that resistor and I'll show you that we can do exactly what we were doing with the machine with all these transistors. Now this part of the machine right here, this coil, is just being used as a trigger, and I'll go through that on the blackboard in a minute. If I take this off again, you're going to see the neon.
Hold on. Okay.
And we're going to force the neon now, so that's nice and bright. Now that we've seen where our circuit wants to operate. And then of course now we can take this and once again put it to this battery. And let's see if I can find a small light. See, because it's going to be hard to see this spark here. It's not going to snap like the other one, see? But it's definitely going there, so I'll go to light to show you. See, there's no current there, Pat. It's just high voltage. So once again, if we put the light here, you can see
Oh yeah, it comes on a little bit, yeah.
just very dimly.
Right. Now, does that mean it's not being charged as quickly as it was with the...
Right.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have all the stages, right? You would make this a multi-turn coil. If we add another stage, it's going to add more power, more
Okay.
power, more power.
Okay.
So I'm going to draw that on the blackboard in a minute, how I would do it. But definitely that energy now is going to charge this battery.
Right.
So that's how you would charge with the wind if that's the only way you had to do it. Now, we can increase that by decreasing the number of turns on this coil. So if I take this other coil and I parallel it with this coil, in other words, put the two coils together,
Well, I don't see two coils.
right here, this is another coil.
Oh, okay.
Where's the first coil?
Yeah, the very first coil there is right here.
Oh, okay.
And that's the red with the green.
Yeah, it has a secondary coil.
Okay.
So I could put these two coils together.
The red coil is where?
Is underneath the green.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
There's a red coil and then there's a green.
Yes,
The green overlays the red.
right.
Okay.
So they weren't wound all together. Otherwise we would wind them just like this with this,
Right.
see? But we wouldn't have a trigger here. What we're telling the machine to do is have the wind trigger the power out of the system. And so we're not depleting this battery very much at all now.
Right.
Because it doesn't have to build a charge and then discharge, and the wind's doing that for us.
Back on the question of the red coil and the green coil.
Yeah.
What you have written on top of the spool relates to what? The red or the green?
That relates to the red, the one that we're using, which is 1,750 turns.
Okay.
That's underneath the green.
So the red's
And the green is
1750.
4,500 turns because this is just a coil I had laying around, so we just used it just to prove the point.
Okay.
We just wanted to prove that, yeah, you can trigger it out, and there's very little current there because when you put this light here, you can barely light it. Now, if we were to parallel these two coils, like here
Wait a minute.
and here, see, it's the opposite effect, see it? Because they're not independent. See, watch, it'll go down. See that? So now, if we give it
So
full...
what exactly did you do then?
Well, if you're going to use this for a wind machine, then it has to be multi... We're going to explain that on the blackboard in a minute.
Okay.
This is just a one-coil system right now, and it's operating just like it's supposed to. So, with the base resistance here, see the light go out? Now there's no trigger. If we come directly into the base, see, there's a little higher trigger there.
Right.
So the faster the wind blows this wheel, the brighter this light's going to be.
Yeah.
The more trigger pulses are going to be around that wheel. See,
Have you added the red coil as well now?
no, we're not going to bother adding this because it's not bi-Fowler wound. So we're just going to put it back to our battery and charge our battery over here.
Okay.
So now we'll explain the system and how you would do the system. Okay, we know that we started out at 330 ohms, and it required, in the end, where the wind had the wheel going the fastest as possible, that it ended up being 10 ohms.
Okay.
A little bit less than 10 ohms because they're paralleled. So, if you're going to build a really high-powered wind machine, you would leave this trigger alone. We'll just erase all this. This would become your trigger coil, and we'll just send this one to ground. And remember, these are going to reverse because, and then we would do the same thing that we've done all along. Each one of these would have its own transistor. And so on and so on and so on and so on.
That depends on how many coils.
How many coils you want to put there. See, and they all get summed together in the end. And these all get connected together and they go to battery A, the plus of battery A. All emitters go to ground. Each one of these then has its own resistor in its base at whatever value turns out to be. And they're put together like that. And then of course the trigger supplies this. So see, they're two independent things here. The wind is doing the triggering, sort of like a magnetic pickup.
So where's the other battery coming in this?
Okay, the other battery then ties battery B. This goes back up to the plus,
Oh, in there, okay.
and this goes to the plus here. So minus goes back up to the plus. This is 12 volts. And this can last a very long time.
That's the one that's giving the little
When
trigger.
it's independent, when the trigger is independent of these coils, it's not a forced discharge each time, even though the discharge does look like this. And what we want are, again, we want this,
Spikes, yeah.
the spikes.
So when you say this would last a very long time, what sort of, you talk about weeks?
This battery may last 6 months.
Oh, really? Okay.
It would probably die on its own if it's set up right. It would probably die on its own of just leakage.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take very much to trigger out to do the charging. But then if you're waiting for the wind to charge your battery, you're not in a hurry anyway.
Mm-hmm. And you said that the more coils you add,
The more coils that you're adding here,
the more,
the more power you're going to get each time. Now, if I change that coil to a coil with far lower resistance, I'm going to get more power. So you're going to want to determine how much current you want this to switch. And remember, the two systems are independent. You're just using this as a trigger. So you're using this as an ignition to trigger the power out of the coil for the secondary system. But you're using the wind as a free source to trigger.
yeah.
You're not depending on the energizer to rotate a mass. Because once the mass stops rotating, there's no more energy being used. The trigger is no longer, it's out of the circuit.
And it depends on the velocity of the wind or the water.
Right, see, the trigger is generating its own energy from the
Right.
wind.
Right.
Because if we measure this, we're going to be looking at something like this, where the positive peaks are triggering these transistors on. Now, under some circumstance, you may find that you might want to put a diode here in that forward direction.
Why?
Then nothing comes back. See?
Okay.
So
But it's not necessary right for our demonstration. But on a high-powered system, you might want to do that.
So if the wind or the water were consistently very low velocity, you'd probably be better off with more coils?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. You want to build your stage up for the amount of wind power you have. If you got a lot of wind and you're going really fast, the faster the frequency, remember, the more of these spikes you're generating per second. So we're generating about 18 spikes per revolution.
So would you have to monitor that realistically if you...
Yeah, when you build a system like this, you would want to engineer it out and then put it in a box, and that'd be it. You'd be done.
And it would be automatic depending
Yeah.
on... Okay.
Yeah, it'd be self-servoing because you're not going to overcharge the battery. You can see there's really no current there. But are we getting anything in our battery? That's the next question. And I think we find out that we are. Now under wind power it would take a little bit longer because I'm just using a real small coil for the demonstration. So we disconnect that, and of course our neon's back on. So you can see we're not catching the spikes right now, but we're being protected.
Oh, this is trickery. Here's where the trickery is.
Yes. So are we getting the energy?
Yeah, but wasn't that already in the battery?
Yes, but we're going to take it out.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, but we've been charging it this whole time with this.
Right.
So we're gonna drain it down and let it come down to a...
Just making sure there's no trickery here, John.
Well, I know. Everybody says John's tricking everybody, so...
Yeah.
What I want people to understand here is, my God, use your imagination on this machine.
Yeah.
Because there's many ways to do this. It's going to take a long time to get the energy out of here.
So the coil underneath the big wheel, that's not being used right now?
No, that's just a trigger coil. See, it's not doing anything.
Right. But it's not sending anything to that battery or...
No, it's not doing anything.
So realistically, this could be just a little, one of those plastic things that kids hold up to the wind.
Yes.
Attached to a...
Right,
And you get a little trigger
Right.
like that.
right. All of this coil's being used for is a trigger coil right now. If I add more magnets to the wheel, I'm going to get more pulses. This is impulse technology is what it is.
So when you say it's triggering, what's it sending? What is it triggering?
It's just triggering this spike, this pulse,
Uh-huh.
through this secondary coil.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, you're
Okay.
stealing that radiant or that
Right.
negative energy Tom talks about.
Right, okay. Yeah, they're beginning to drop a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't able to charge very long, and
Right.
you'll see that it's going to take us a little bit longer than normal
Right,
here to charge again,
right.
because we're only using one little coil. And it's very high resistance. It's like 30 ohms.
Okay.
I want to be around 3 ohms or 4 ohms, see, to get the energy out. And it's a solid pull piece.
Oh, so you have a pole in the middle of the coil.
Yeah, this is just a piece of iron that I've
Right.
shoved in the center of the coil because this is a coil that I had laying around.
Oh, for some...
And-
Not a bolt.
Right, I should go find a coil, that's more suited to it, but this is good enough for practical
Yeah.
purposes.
For demonstration, yeah.
So if you had no core, would that? I mean, if you had nothing in the core, would
Well,
it
it's
still
still
work?
going to do that, except that it's not going to be as efficient.
Okay.
But if you didn't even have any metal or anything to do it, then I suggest you go down to the sand wash, drag a magnet through, and get the iron out of the sand and fill the core with it. In fact, put the whole coil in the core. In fact, we'll do that in a minute. These are down pretty good.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so we're going to just go ahead back and charge it again.
Okay. They're down noticeably.
Yeah, okay. So we'll go back and charge it again. And what we'll do is let it charge. And we'll get some iron. So I've been to the beach and I've collected some iron.
Some iron from the beach?
Well, sure, out of the sand.
How do you collect iron from the sand?
With a magnet.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. Boy, that must have taken a while.
Well, yeah. So if I didn't have a core, right, I would just use this to fill it. So if I could find a little box, I just put the whole thing in the box. I don't want to short out anything by putting it here, but I just put the whole coil right down in this box. After all, I'd have to make do with what I had. I'd have to be real creative in this circumstance because I have nothing.
So then would you have a funnel or something to put the iron filings down the middle of the coil?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Or I would just fill the coil
Somehow.
and bury it in the iron, and then it's contained around the whole iron. In other words, every bit of iron's contained around the coil, which would sort of be like doing this.
Ah, yeah.
See, because now I've increased.
Yeah.
See, and as I contain this, I get a little more energy by tuning this. You can actually feel it in here, Tony, if you want to feel that. You can actually feel it vibrating.
Yeah, you can.
It's humming.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Yeah, so it's actually putting the energy there in the battery. So that's what I'd do if I didn't have an iron bolt or I didn't have any welding rod.
Right, okay. That's useful information. That is very useful information.
Well, I'm giving them every possible solution.
Yeah.
I'm trying to point out every possible solution because I want the people that are viewing this film, I want them to be very creative about this whole thing. You use what you have.
Yeah, you could put some painter's tape over the bottom of that and just fill it up with iron filings.
Yes, you could.
Yeah.
And in the box, if you have had arthritis in your hands, you could get the cat to dig a hole in it.
Is that going to be in there? No. But you see my point. You just got to you've got to be creative when you're dealing with this type of energy. I only have this or I only have that. So what am I going to do? Am I just going to stand there and do nothing and say it doesn't work? Well, that's what most do. You know, but I'm not going to do that. See, I'm going to find a way to get the power out of something through whatever means I have to use to get it. Because after all, I don't have any energy now and the lights are up.
And
I need to charge this battery. I'm going to put this right there.
Okay.
So once again, I wanted to show that it was possible to just be creative and to charge this battery. Now this is going to take a little bit longer than normally the multi-pole machine would take.
Mm-hmm.
But we did see how the lights were noticeably down. And we've had this on there a little time. And let's see where it got us.
Not bad.
Right, for a one-pole machine.
Right.
So there you go. So let's drain it out.
Okay. Which it's dropping off already, so.
Yeah, it's dropping off already, but we're not putting very much in there.
Right. Right.
But the point is, let's just drain it out and see where we can get it, what we can get
Right.
out of the wind as a source for trigger.
And you
It's
said,
actually taken a little while to drop down.
right, but you said that you pulled the wheel a little bit to start with because of the magnets. You had to get it past the magnets.
Yeah, you won't have to
The
do
wind
that in the
itself
wind.
can
On
do
this
that.
machine, you have to do it
Yeah.
because, after all, my wind machine there isn't strong.
Right.
Not dropping off very fast. The machine's still connected to them.
They're getting fainter and fainter.
Yeah, they should go now.
How many watts each bulb is it?
Each one is 65 for a total of 0.4 ohms average. So we're asking for a lot of power from a simple little machine. I think they've dropped off enough. I don't want to go all the way to zero, but
Right.
Yeah, they're pretty low.
yeah.
So you could wire your house to have the essential stuff on.
Well, you could go to sleep all night and the wind could be doing this and you wouldn't be burning very much energy. So what I'm asking everybody to do is be absolutely creative with what you have at hand. And so you know that they're two different forms of energy, but the point being that you can always find a little source of energy to trigger more energy out of a system like this. And if you don't have the materials, you can find something. You go down and let nature help you find it. Just drag a magnet through the sand. But remember, when you're charging this way, that you're on nature's time scale.
Sure.
So if the wind quits, you're going to be waiting. Or crank it by hand. This isn't the most ideal trigger because this is set up for this machine to work in multi but it's just an example of what can be done.
Right.
Because if I was to say, build a trigger circuit, say that I use this for the trigger. See, it would be sitting over here as a trigger. And this would probably give me more than what this is giving me.
Why?
Because it's not set up as part of this multi-winding machine.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And I'm just using this as an example, but normally you would wind a coil like this, and you would wind a much bigger coil for this. In other words,
Okay.
heavier wire
Right. So this would just be the trigger.
for about 500 turns or 600 turns.
Right.
Right, and then this would just be the trigger, and of course the trigger is just coming by the magnets like this. See, and there's no decrease in speed. So if I wire this into the system, where we can see this, if I just disconnect this, and I wire this into the system, look at you, look.
Right there.
Look here, but see, I'm not even close to it. Look now, I'm really close to it.
Right.
See?
Right.
And now I'm really close to it. So here I go. I'm going to suck the energy away. And that's exactly what you would have, is just this.
Yeah. Huh. And then presumably battery A could be a lot smaller.
Yes, battery A could be a lot smaller. It could be flashlight batteries after that.
Okay.
Because you're not asking for a lot. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this back. And there we are.
Yeah.
See? And when I touch this, I'm asking
So, right.
for the energy. So this, once again, this could be a water wheel. Right? And under these circumstances, I would more or less say you could use neo iron magnets to get a sharper trigger, because it's not involved in a motor here.
Yeah.
It's just involved in a trigger.
So it wouldn't really matter.
It wouldn't matter. Because you're still getting the energy back to this battery. It's just taking longer because this is a slower method to do it. But my God, if you're depending on the wind, you got plenty of time. Wind generators go in bursts. We have them outside the shop here. And right now, a wind generator at the breeze that we have out here is developing nothing here. There's no current there at all. So they won't even start turning until it's 23 miles an hour. But yet this is turning. And what would you say this is, Tony, about how fast?
The wind speed?
Yeah. About
10
4 or
miles?
5 miles an hour, somewhere in there.
Yeah. 10 tops.
Yeah, not much at all.
Yeah.
But all it has to do is hit this gigantic fan, which is not important after this.
Yeah.
What's important is you're triggering it out of the environment here.
Yeah.
And besides, the wind machine's kind of neat to listen to.
Yeah. And it's not unattractive to look at either.
No. But we'll let it go for a while, and then we'll measure this battery. We'll just put the lights back on it. So you can-
John, what's going on here?
Well, you can hear the trigger pulse.
When you put the,
We're just using this as an electromagnet.
yeah, when you put the thing around it, you can feel it vibrating,
Yeah.
but now you can hear it.
Now you can hear it. And here, if I take the battery that's not being depleted away, just using this as a potential source, there's no more trigger. So the minute I add the source, that's the magnetic field triggering the pulses out of the trigger circuit. And if you just put your hand there, you can feel it. It's like
Yeah.
a hum.
It's like a hum, yeah.
Right. You can actually see it there.
I can see it moving. Seems like it's quivering.
Mm-hmm. So actually, here, maybe we can see it this way. Actually, it's the wrong magnetic field. It's backwards compared to what the monopoles do.
Yeah.
It didn't turn, it didn't turn.
Well, from the opposite end it would turn.
Okay.
So I guess what we should do now is, how much energy do we get out of this wind? Let's see where our battery, we depleted our battery pretty good last time.
Mm-hmm. Pretty good.
So it's doing exactly like we said it would do.
Mm-hmm.
And the circuit's totally different.
Right.
It's one that's being powered by the wind. And the idea is to only supply a little trigger circuit to this coil and have this coil open and close, and we'll draw that on the board, what we're after.
So if the initial, the other coil were bigger, would that make more difference or not?
Which coil?
The one that's under the wheel?
This coil here?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, we could have a very small coil like this.
Okay. That's what I thought you said.
Many
Then I-
turns.
Okay, then I thought you said you needed a bigger one.
And actually, no. The bigger one has to be the power coil.
Okay.
So I'm going to do that on the blackboard here. So basically what we built was, we have a propeller, shaft, a magnetic wheel. Now, depending on how many magnets you put in this wheel, that's how many pulses you're going to get per revolution. So if you got 18 magnets on this wheel, you're going to get 18 pulses.
18 spikes.
Yeah, you're going to get 18 spikes per revolution for 360 degrees. So all we want to do is, these are all north poles. They can be south poles. You can choose south or north. Then all we want to do is build a pickup coil underneath the wheel with as many turns as possible that we can get on that pickup coil. So this becomes our trigger, and our power coil we want much bigger, with much bigger wire. So this may be number 20 wire, and this may be number 25 wire. So all we're doing is generating this impulse like that.
So no spike on that, really.
No spike.
Right.
And then what we tell it to do is turn this on and off, and we generate this impulse.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want again is we just want to catch these spikes. We don't want any current involved whatsoever. And once again, you may twist all the possible wires together for as many as you want. Turn them with a drill. And then, of course, each one of these, once you put this around the bobbin, you have multi wires. Of course, they're all tied together at the top. And then each one of these strands is going to its own transistor. For how many devices you want to put in line. And then all these bases, once again, all the base resistors are going to a summing bus. And each one of these is going to its own individual transistor, which is down here. Okay, now what we're after with this type of machine is a gate. Since we're not supplying any energy except for the wind power, what we're after with this coil is normally when the current's applied, the coil gets a north pole and a south pole, and the blotch wall or the center of this magnetic field comes together.
And that's the null spot.
That's the 0 point.
Right.
And so what we want this thing to do is we want to create a vacuum energy pump, as Tom Bearden talks about. What we want to do is we want to force the blotch wall to move from this area to a squeeze down of this area. So when we squeeze it down to this area right here, it bounces back, and basically what happens is the vacuum energy that Tom Bearden talks about, which is all this stuff out here, he says it's boiling like a cauldron out there, right? We want this to suck in, compress, and push out. So basically what we're doing is we're making a pump. Making a pump that goes this direction, and then this direction, and then this direction, and this direction. But when we go this direction, we are forcing the stuff out. We're forcing the energy out.
So you're sucking it in and just pushing it
We're
out.
sucking it in, that's random out here, through the magnetic field. This magnetic field that's out here, all this stuff is going to couple with those magnetic lines. So what we want to do is we want to bring it in, couple it, and get that high potential spike out. Now, everybody's going to say to me, well, John, you're talking about back EMF. No, I'm not. Because normally, when what we get out of this is we get this spike and we get this, and then we get this little thing right here. This is your back EMF. It's always less than what the battery level is. So we can't use this. That's not what we're using. What we want is we want this sharp gradient spike that's not even part of the back EMF. Because if we reverse this, go the other direction, the back EMF would come down like this. That would be, this would be at 12 volts, and this back EMF would be at about 8. But this one's at 300. This is the one we want to steal. We want to put this back in the battery. We want this energy waveform back in the battery. We don't want this waveform because that would be standard EMF or standard electromagnetic energy coming from a half-wave battery chart. We don't want this symbol. We want this. And we don't want this. We want this energy here. We want to move this form of energy to this form of energy. And then if there's 18 magnets there, then there's 18 of these per revolution. So in 1 minute, you could figure out how many of those spikes you had across the battery. So the monopole system, once again, is not a back EMF generator, and there's no drag on that generator, as you can see right here. If I shut this fan off, there's no drag on that thing whatsoever. It's just going to coast to a stop. There's no energy being generated by that wheel except for a pulse. And it's very limited. But yet you can see that even when the wind speed goes down,
Yeah.
that it doesn't take very much to trigger it out. Now the flashing that you're looking at right there is because the wheel is bent, and the magnets, if you look at it very closely, they're not all going to the, see, one's a little bit lower than the other. And it does take, you know, something about that speed to get it to trigger out, which the wind does very easily, because you can watch it here again. You can watch it pick up.
So the imperfections in the
The
pulse is due to the fact the magnets.
Yeah, because if you take your camera and you look at the wheel here.
Yeah, the magnets are not totally.
Well, no, the wheel was a bent wheel to begin
Okay.
with, and it's whatever we had. And
Right.
it proves the point that no matter what you have laying around,
Right.
you can make it work and do this.
Right.
We didn't want anything that was totally perfect.
Right.
We
And now
want-
it's stopped. So because you.
I have connected it back to tell it to recharge this battery.
Right.
And we started with this battery at 1270. It's now at 1272. And this one,
How long ago was that?
that was just about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
And This one now is at 1265, between 65 and 66 there when you catch the peak. And we pulled it down, what, 2 times, Pat?
Right, put it down to 6 something, was it?
We pulled it down to like 3 volts.
3 volts, okay.
So you can see that our wind machine is quite capable of doing the job. Any questions?
Well, I have one question, not so much about the technology you just talked about, but I've noticed during this filming, the process of this filming, the saturation of the color has been pulsating, and I've been looking for sort of null spots in the room, but it seems to be quite pervasive quite often. Why would that be happening, John? Do you...
Well, probably because of this rotating magnetic field and this coil that's pulsing, which is, let me see if I can find something to show you. See, it is pulsing, it is doing this expansion in the room.
That's about the same frequency as what we were getting on film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right there, yeah. So see, it is acting as, set up this way with this circuit, it's acting like a vacuum energy pump, and it could be interfering with the chips in the camera. I can't quite pinpoint it right at this time. But,
Right.
But I know that sometimes cameras shut off
Yeah.
when they get around these pulsed magnetic fields that are sharp transients.
So is it a magnetic or a scalar thing?
It's a scalar
Or both?
effect.
Yeah.
It's actually when the coil. Actually, what we're really doing is when the coil sort of hits together, and it shoots out that scalar vector.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Tesla's machines, his earthquake machine worked that way, and then of course this scalar vector, right, after a while built up and caused an earthquake in New York. So it may be affecting your camera a little bit.
I'm getting a little bit of it right now.
Yeah.
And
you're nowhere near it.
yeah.
Yeah, because it shoots out in, it actually is like Tom says. Remember, you've seen drawings from Tom Bearden that
Yeah.
depict this.
Yeah.
And of course, the scalar is when 2 of these waves that are in phase come together and equal this 0.
Right.
You know, that's exactly what's happening
With
here.
the hidden substructure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, all the frequencies are contained in this vector,
Yeah.
no matter what they are.
We sort of went over that a little bit
Yeah.
in DVD number 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a possibility with a camera.
Yeah.
And so,
So there you have it, folks. Don't complain about the
yeah,
movie.
right. I mean, when you're pulsing magnetic fields and you're doing those kind of things, you know, that especially at the levels that we're working with, which are non-current related, the scalar is going in all directions.
Do not adjust your sets.
Right. So, I guess I've led you down a different path this time.
Well,
Yeah, you have.
I think the, you know, I think what the thrust of this has been to get people to really think outside the box and not inside a different box, but just let your mind roam free. And once you grasp the concept of this, it can be applied in a zillion different ways.
That's correct. What I want people to do is, you know, energy is getting more expensive, and you just don't know from day to day what's going to happen. And so what I'm trying to do is get them to be creative. I know that that's hard sometimes to be creative, but I want you to think outside the box of what could you do with the junk that's laying around your house. you've got the wind. You don't pay for the wind unless you're buying a wind generator system that costs you $2.5 million. Yes. And you don't pay for a little stream that runs by your house unless you've invested in a dam and you spent $10 million. But just something this speed, can work all day and night on your batteries.
So these huge wind farms that are being constructed could actually be harnessed in an entirely different and more efficient way.
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, they could. Right? You could. Wouldn't need the massive propellers that they've got right now, and you can make them look like things that spun that probably were pretty to your eyes. So that's how I would do it if I was going to do it, and because I would engineer the thing out probably for something like a windmill propeller, non-corrosive if you lived at the beach, plastic probably, and I would probably use a neomagnet, and this is the only time that I'm recommending it. I would probably use a neomagnet in this plastic wheel, but I would space the coil so that the drag was as least as possible from the saturation.
So it'd be lower, the top of the coil would be lower.
Yeah, the top of the coil. In other words, if I had the coil, I would be adjusting the spacing this way.
Right.
You see, because we've already seen, and we've already got that on film,
Right.
that it was triggering way out here. So yes, I could use neomagnets because I'm not saturating this completely.
So John, back on the wind farm, taking the average size of one of those wind farm propellers, I don't know how much each one generates or what voltage.
Well, they're probably in the megawatts. They're pretty big.
So to produce the same amount of power.
Well, remember, we're translating power.
Right.
We're
Right.
currentless. We
Right.
want to do it currentless. So we can't look at it that way. We can only look at how many megawatts can we get out of this battery after we've charged it this way.
Right.
But if I'm an independent out somewhere and I'm stuck and I have no money to buy a wind machine or solar panels or anything like this is exactly the way that I would do it.
So are you saying that the wind farms, they produce current?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. But a normal,
And they're tied into the grid.
right.
And so when there's no wind when there's no wind in the grid, they're not putting any power into that grid. See, they're not charging a battery bank or doing anything like that.
But your average homeowner, if he was able to strap a little propeller to
Oh,
his
he could
chimney
make this
and bring
machine,
this
yes.
down, yeah.
Yes, he could run an emergency supply of batteries from just
Right.
what was just shown right here.
Right.
He wouldn't need a very big battery right here for the trigger.
Right. He just need big enough to power his house for a few days
Right.
in an emergency.
Yes. And that may be coming because electricity is going to get very expensive here, coming up pretty quick in the future.
So how does this compare with the solar? Where you have a same kind of thing, you're using solar power just to trigger a little...
Well, solar is current. They're pushing current
Okay.
from the panels.
But you said you could use the solar, one panel to...
Yeah, you could drive the whole system, solar and wind-wise.
Okay, yeah.
You could use the solar panels to keep your trigger battery charged.
Okay.
And you'd only need a small solar panel.
Right,
You'd only need a panel about this big
right,
versus a whole roof full of panels.
right.
But the good thing about this is if you're going to do it this way, is you just move the next battery
Uh-huh.
into the circuit.
And that's charging too.
Yes. Yeah, because if I disconnect the charging point, whether I put it there or here, see, you're just letting the wind do it. You're just taking off and letting the wind do it.
So how many batteries could you have stacked up there?
Of these batteries here,
Yeah.
well, I'd just keep going. If I was going to do this, I would maybe put 4 or 5 or 6 of these batteries, because now I'm charging them all. And then say I just want to take this one somewhere and do something else. And what's unique about this system is, since these loops are not part of this same coil, the energy is a little bit different. So I can take this battery out of here and put it here.
And switch it out and charge it,
Yeah, I can switch it out. Or I can take an inverter and charge that one. I only need a very small amount of power here. I don't even need a battery this big.
So could this be set up like that, where just a normal switch would
Yes.
put this battery in?
Yes,
That battery?
yes.
You wouldn't have to physically lift it and change it?
No, you wouldn't have to physically lift it.
Right.
It could be all computerized.
Yeah.
But this is, I'm just
I'm just thinking
trying to
of
show
the-
every possible conceivable way to get energy. Because I know that most people don't understand what it is.
Right.
You understand, well, you put the battery in, and when the battery's out, you throw that battery away. You know, and I'm done playing with my toy. But this is a different kind of toy.
Right.
You know, this is a toy that's more based upon Tom Bearden's principles, where you're potentializing the ion, and you're moving that ion backwards, because you're not seeing any spark here at all.
Yeah.
But what are we actually getting here? It's potential. It's that neon that you're seeing right there. It's not burning out, so there's no current.
Yeah.
It's just potential. And we're just putting that to the 2 batteries. So we'll get this one back out, because we were. But that's just an example of what you could do.
So you could charge a battery this size just the same way?
Yeah. It doesn't make any difference what battery you're putting on the output here. You could charge them, you could put all these together and charge them.
And the ones on the other side, the ones that you've got off
Yeah, the big ones you could do too.
But they take longer.
Right, and of course we went outside and looked at those wind generators, and the wind was blowing, but they're not moving.
Right.
But something like this would be moving at that wind speed.
And you said they weren't moving because you had them attached to
They
it?
got it. The wind has to get up past 17 miles an hour before
Okay.
they can even turn the alternator
Right. Okay.
that's in there, and that's a neo alternator, neodymium iron boron magnet alternator.
Okay.
So, you know, it's got a pretty good sized lock, and it has to break free of that lock.
Right.
Where the monopole is not the same thing, and when we're only going to use this for a trigger. And for all this matters, there could be a cam on the back of this wheel, and it could be points.
What do you mean points?
It
Like
could be
your car?
mechanical.
Yeah.
If you had to do it mechanical, you could do it also. If you had to do it with brushes, you could do it. With contactors. And what I mean by a contactor is, you know, if
Like off a
Like in the
old car.
street.
well,
Yeah.
what I mean by a contactor is a contactor would look like this on the end of this shaft and have a bar here, right? That's solid. And then just 2 brushes that come across like this. And so this would come around, right? And depending how many, if I was to draw it like this, I could have a bar here and a bar here. I could have 18 bars. So I'd have 18 magnets, basically. You see what I'm saying? I wouldn't even need the magnets. I just have a contactor here. I'm going to the same circuit here.
Yeah.
I'm just replacing the trigger coil with a contactor, which is a switch.
One One question I had, you on your drawings you showed them going to ground.
Yeah.
Where are these ones going to ground?
The ground is the negative
Okay.
terminal of the battery.
All right.
When I'm talking about, see, in the normal monopole, this doesn't return to the battery ground. The ground returns to the positive terminal of this battery. So it's never at ground.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it's doing here. It's never really at ground. It's above ground. But all the mechanisms, the coil, the resistors, the diodes that protect it, the neon light is all going to this battery ground. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I have a really ignorant question. How is this a monopole motor as opposed to an SG motor?
It's the same thing.
Okay,
It's one and the same.
all right.
There is no monopole motor that's not an SG motor, and there is no SG motor that's not a monopole motor. And actually, we called it monopole motor because of the patent office. It's actually an energizer. It's what Tom Byrne refers to as an energizer. We're finishing up with this battery now. We want to test this battery, so we want to see what we actually, after running this for a half hour to an hour, we want to see what we actually got in this battery. So we want to prove that no current, using no current will charge the storage battery to the levels that we want. And once again, we disconnected, and you can see that the energy's there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and take the energy out of the battery.
So how long have we been charging the battery for?
Well, we've been charging the battery for about an hour or so. Continuous, but remember, this is at a different rate, so this is going to take much longer to put it back in the battery.
Right.
But I wanted to see where it was because we're like running out of time because we did take this to 0.
And it's dropping off.
Yeah, it's starting to drop off now because this is a slow process when having the wind do it.
But using the wind, essentially, it's found energy.
Yeah, it's found energy, and
It's like finding some money in the park.
right, and then we've only got a little simple circuit here, and we've got the wrong coil. You know, we've got way too much impedance in this coil to even put a charge in this battery. But as you can see, it was doing it. Because if I put it back just for a second here, and you can see the light will go out. You don't see any sparks here at all. See? So you really don't see anything. And you don't see any current here. So there's really nothing there. So there we go. And if we put this back right now, we should have popped back up a little bit.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. And that's residual. That's the residual coming back. But for just using this just little wind machine and this is just this little simple circuit, I think proves the point that you can do this. This is the radiant going to the battery. See how powerful that is? And of course this is the low turns coil. You can see in here with the, it's quite a bit, but look, there's no spark.
So you got radiant on the battery,
Yeah,
but
you
no
got
spark.
radiant on the battery in both sides. Watch this. So we're tickling the battery with this radiant current. See? Well, we're tuning the HEI system, and notice one thing here with the making the wind machine. The radiant gets absorbed by the iron. Watch the light. So what we want this end of the battery is this. You see right there. And then you get a little spark there. See it? Did you catch it?
Yep. Woo. And what does that indicate?
High radiant output. You can see the spark here.
Okay.
Yeah, you might want to chop in, the best one of the picture.